Brilliant. And we are live. Hello and welcome to this week's, the newest episode of Beyond Magic. I'm your host, Daniel Mangena, creative Beyond Intention Paradigm, host of stuff and all the other accolades that aren't really that important today. I've got my good friend, David, aka The Stream Strickel, here with us today. I'm very excited to have David on the show. He agreed pretty last minute to hop on. So really, really grateful. We're going to be having a bloody good conversation today, he says, because me and David always have bloody good conversations. We're going to be talking about some tire-esque tools that will all make sense by the end of this conversation. If you remember from last week, we had my friend Nathan on. We were talking about purpose. We were talking about setting intentions. We went into soul missions. It was dope as fudge. What we're going to be doing today is taking another step along the flow funnel that I've been discussing with you guys over our time together and start getting into the nitty gritty of how this stuff actually works in practical terms. We've done a lot of theory. We've done a lot of ideas, a lot of thought stuff. Now we're going to start transcending that into physical reality a little bit more. And I couldn't think of anyone better to be doing that with than David. So David, welcome to the show.
Dan, it's fantastic to be with you always. I was going to say to be here, but I haven't actually been here. I've been on one of your other programs, and then we do another program together just about every Tuesday. So it's always fun to be on with you.
Exactly. So David and I are both co-hosts with our friend Walt on a show called LOA Today, all about the law of attraction. For those of you who are watching this on the spiritual directory, you may not know who David is. Those of you who are watching this, I'm actually streaming across more platforms today. I'm on my page, I'm on the Dream with Dan group, so you guys would have had a chance to connect with David and this stuff before. But David actually he channels consciousness, like source energy. It's wonderful and fabulous and delightful. But we get the opportunity to engage in very, very deep and connected exchanges of ideas. And it's just wonderful. So David's actually supported a couple of my programs coming in and allowing us to have that connection. And obviously, on the Tuesday, we both do LOA Today, which is really cool. So what I wanted to first of all start off with is, first of all, thanking everyone who's watching live. I really appreciate it. I know a lot of people end up watching this on a replay, but I'm really grateful. So hello to Kerry, to Michelle, Rajinder Singh, Pam and Rowena. Please do pop on and say hello. It would be great to know who you are, where you're tuning in from and all that good stuff. So for those of you who haven't met David, I'm going to give David an opportunity to tell a bit more of his story, where he's coming from, and maybe then we'll have some insights into why I've asked him to join us today.
So I don't know where to start. I've been talking all day long, and this is it's the end of my day. But
so, who are you? What do you do?
I am David Strickel, and I channel a consciousness that is available to all of us. It is source consciousness that I call the stream. It is known widely as the Stream of David because my podcast is called the Stream of David. Mm-hmm. And it's ironic because years and years ago, I was told by a psychic, because I never knew what was wrong with me. I never knew what was different about me. But I always knew that I had something different than a lot of people had. And I didn't really know that as a child. I thought everybody had a knowing. Mm-hmm. And this knowing as a small child was sort of a wondrous thing. And then as I got older, it got me into trouble a lot. It got me kicked out of Sunday school. It got me into trouble, arguing with adults about things. But ultimately, when I rolled into being a teenager, it turned out to be a really good thing because it got me through a very difficult life experience in my teens and rolling into my early 20s. And then when I got into my 20s and 30s, I started going to psychics to try to understand what was going on with me, what this knowing was. And I had a psychic named Hazel Burley in Casadega, Florida, years ago tell me that I was a channel. I said, "Oh, you're a channel." Just like it was kind of like nothing. Well, I didn't even know what that was. I knew what a psychic was, and I knew what a medium was. Obviously, I was sitting in front of one at the time, but I didn't really know what a channel was. Mm-hmm. And she questioned me as much as I questioned her. It was this amazing experience. I'll never forget it. It was life-changing. And then she hands me this big plastic binder that said Abraham on the front of it. And she said, you need to listen to these tapes. They were cassette tapes. That's how long ago this was. Well, cassette, the CDs were already around, but that's still pretty long time ago. And I remember thinking, oh, that sounds like the Bible. That sounds like Old Testament. I was raised in church. I don't really want to go back to that. And I really shunned it because Abraham sounded so biblical to me. Mm-hmm. Well, fast forward years and years later, I discovered Abraham in a very magical way myself, years after she told me this. The Abraham teachings were very powerful for me because it sounded like stereo. And then I got to the point where I realized that I had my own connection to that, and that I needed to pay attention to my own personal connection to that. And there was something, a little variation of that was being offered that had some value. And it had value in helping me transform my life. And ultimately, I got to a point where I realized that I accepted that I was a channel, started teaching myself to speak it. And I taught myself how to write it first and then to speak it. And then I started a podcast and I wrote a book. And when I started these things, I realized that I needed a name. And I asked for a name. And the answer that I got was, we are not a we are not an I, we are not human, we are source, you may call us source. We are a stream of consciousness. All that is beyond physical is really just thought. It's consciousness, it's intelligence. Mm-hmm. And we don't have a name. We're not human. We've never been human. That's not what we're about. But you can humanize us if it helps you make sense of us. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where a lot of people come up with these. There always seem to be male names, right? Their channeled entity is always a guy.
Of Acturo, Plady, Beluca,
Right. And they said, just, it's up to you. Call us what you want. It's really up to you. And that's when I said, well, you're a stream of consciousness. I'm going to call you the stream. And then I thought, a clever name for my podcast is a stream of David. I came full circle. Now people say the stream of David sounds biblical. So exactly where it turned me off of Abraham in the beginning as well. But it seems to work, so I'm okay with it.
Got you. Well, thank you for sharing that. It kind of gives us a bit more background and substance to what we're going to dive into, because you and I have, we chat sometimes, not even when we're producing a program, just when we're sort of getting together. And one of the things I've always loved about your work is that middle road that you represent between, say, Abraham, be up your spiral, be in high vibration and everything will happen, or like a doom and gloom person. You're like, okay, well, be up your spiral and appreciate that sometimes you're not going to be up your spiral, and that actually inspires you to get up your spiral next time because now you know what you want to go to. And everything's this way and everything can be that way. And I love the very lovingly gritty, hands-on but in the heart approach to the intelligence that comes through you, whether it's in conversation as David or whether it's in communion with the stream. And I wanted to kind of just tap that a little bit more in terms of dealing with contrast, which is, we had the obviously the panel. What was it? What do we call it?
The summit last
week, which I was blown away. I spent the whole time just like soaking in everything that was coming through, because I think when we're talking about creating your reality and conscious creation and all this kind of stuff, a lot of people are being shaken right now on how real any of that is, because life is a bit bonkers. So I was wondering if you could just speak a little bit to the work that you're doing. We'll speak more about Tyre and what you're doing with the boot camp and all that kind of stuff in a bit, but just talk a little bit from your perspective on how you're really approaching this.
Well, the idea of a lot of spiritual teaching appealed to me because I was raised in religion. Mm-hmm. And when I got out of religion, I identified for a little sliver of a moment as an atheist. Oh, there's nothing. Mm-hmm. Because the spiritual stuff was a big turnoff to me in the beginning because it seemed religion-like. Mm-hmm. And then I released the judgment around it and realized that spiritual teachings had a lot of value beyond religion, beyond the judgment and dogma and all that stuff. And I dove into all of that. And then I realized, getting into spirituality, that it can be dogmatic, it can be judgmental. It does a lot of different things for a lot of different people. And there's a lot of fairy dust. There's unicorns and rainbows and just get happy and all of those messages. All of that stuff has value for the right people at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
What didn't work for me is that I really got deep into law of attraction because I understood law of attraction very early on. I think I've told you that I recall understanding universal law as early as age 5 or 6. My first recollection of seeing something that I wanted that was material and being told that I would never be able to have it and knowing otherwise. So that's my very first recollection of that. And so having grown up very poor and grew up in a single parent minimum wage household, divorced parent, I really hung my happiness on material things. That money and material things were everything. And so I set about manifesting money and material things from my teens all the way into my early 40s, and got into a place where I came from no money, no formal education, to a very lavish lifestyle that I manifested. So it was sort of like, okay, I figured that out. That's great. But then I got there and realized that, wait, there's got to be more, because I'm still not happy. I still don't love myself. I still don't have clarity on what the universe is all about. I'm still triggered by things. And that's where I realized that I needed to go a little deeper. And that's when the Abraham material sort of fell back in my lap years after being told that I was a channel. And I really got into it. And I loved the message because it's all true. If you focus on what you want, you're going to get what you want. The part that where it sort of stopped working for me was the fact that I couldn't just always be in my vortex, as they like to say. I couldn't just always be up my spiral, as I like to say, or in high vibration. There were times that things just took me down. And I didn't really understand that until I went inward to my own knowing and really dove deep into, why is that? Why do bad things happen to good people? Why do we have quote unquote evil in our world? Why do I have these triggers in my life? Why do I have these blocks of abundance? I didn't mean financial abundance, but health, physical well-being, health, relationships, all of those things. And I think we just lost Dan.
No, I'm still here.
Okay. It says that I'm in the show, but you went away, so I wasn't sure what was going on. So I really needed to figure all that stuff out. And what I discovered is that we are in a polarized environment. We do have this thing called vibrational flow that is impacting our vibration all the time. And we're not ever going to, quote unquote, heal that or cure that. That's part of being physical. And coming to understand vibrational flow and this constant up and down of vibration without judgment is very transformative. When you're no longer judging down as negative, and you're no longer judging obstacles as bad, and you're no longer judging the darkest moments of your life as something awful and terrible that should have never happened. When you start really transitioning how you look at all of the negative things, then suddenly they're not negative. And when you do that, you go through a process that we call the Taya practice, which I'll talk more about later, of detuning. So you detune your transgressor energy, you detune the things that are negative in your life. And what I also realized is that understanding consciousness on a quantum level, that we are perceiving in physical, we are perceiving linear time. But truthfully, everything that has ever happened and everything that is ever going to happen is happening simultaneously. It's all a conscious reality that we are in. We are just perceiving it in a linear way. So everything that's ever happened to us is still there. And if it's traumatic, it's still active until we make it not traumatic. And the only way to make it not traumatic is to find appreciation for it. And when I discovered that, it was sort of like, I felt like I discovered this holy grail that unleashed or removed my abundance blocks, because the things that I wasn't getting that I wanted, other than money and material things, the health, the weight loss, I used to weigh about 300 pounds. Oh, wow. I had chronic back pain. I was addicted to Oxycontin. I was in a bad relationship. I was actually making a lot of money in a career field that I didn't like. All of those things were blocks for me. I couldn't figure out how to manifest my way out of them. I wound up in life at age 40, 41. And I realized, and a lot of people do around that age, what do you want the rest of your life to look like? That's that midlife crisis, right? What do I want the rest of my life to look like? What time do I have left? Now, I think what happens around that age is you see your parents getting old and you realize you're going to be there before you know it. What are you going to do with the rest of that time? And I didn't want to live the rest of that time working in a job that I didn't like, depending on financial success and material things to be all of my happiness, and being in pain all the time and being in a body that I didn't like and things like that. So I had to remove my abundance blocks through a process of appreciation. And that was magical. And from there, I created the spiritual practice that we now call Taya.
Well, the thing I love, again, just me, you and I being on the same page on these things, is that abundance isn't about money. It's about being a natural state of all of that area being in fulfillment and being in a healthy and overflowing place, which is how the universe really works. And when you unblocked your abundance, it just started to flow into these other areas. You've been very, very successful in focusing it in this one place, but those blocks were basically hiding in other shadows. Am I on the right?
Yes. And everybody has something. Everybody has something that they're working on that seemingly isn't working until they get these tools. And then when you get these tools, it does not deliver a state of perfection. It's not, and we're not here to achieve perfection. But when you get these tools and learn to exist in your vibrational flow without judgment, you can reach a state of joy no matter what. And that's the transformation. Being able to be in joy regardless of what's going on in your life and what's going on in the world, having joy, and from joy receiving clarity, and from joy and clarity ultimately manifesting abundance, which doesn't mean that you're going to just convince yourself that you're joyful while you're living under the overpass in a box and being okay with that. That's not what that's about. It really is just being joyful in your now, understanding that that's the clearest path to everything that you want. Delivering yourself from addiction, bodily conditions that aren't working for you, illness, chronic pain, abusive relationships, toxic relationships. I don't like the word toxic because there's always that victim vibe that goes along with that.
Oh, I'm so toxic.
Everyone's toxic around me. Well, why do you think that is? A toxic relationship, toxic people. Why do I keep attracting toxic people? I hear that all the time.
Because you're a vibrational match for the toxicity. So
right.
Address you and address yourself. But.
Exactly. So that and it's hard to, in a very surface way, dive into this idea of just being in joy and making that your life priority. But if you think about it, everything that we want to change is because we think we're going to be more joyful when we change it. There's no other reason to do anything. Every experience that we want to have, every person that we want to be with, every condition we want to change in our lives, it's because we think that's going to bring more happiness on some level. So learning to get yourself into a state of joy by releasing judgment and fear from your life. And you can do that. Look how much fear and judgment we tend to live under in our society currently, because we're taught to be fearful. And we're naturally discerners of preference. But when you introduce fear to preference, suddenly you have judgment. And in learning to detune those things is very transformative. And that's my message for everyone all the time, as you know, that I'm talking about constantly, because I've seen now the result, working with hundreds of people in my program. I've seen the result of detuning fear and judgment from your life, which allows you to trust the universal process of creation. And when you trust that process, then you can go through this up and down vibrational flow and really let things flow into your life. And ultimately, you can let anything flow into your life. That you can have it all message is true, but you're never going to get there if you don't find joy first.
And you know what? This actually calls me to loop it back to something you said before. Well, we were just saying just a second ago about the victim energy, that if you're experiencing, to toxicity, if we're experiencing toxicity, the low vibration, we can only experience what we're vibrational match to, and that's what's going on. So when we are uplifting ourselves into appreciation, isn't that dissolving the locks to disempowering experiences and putting us in a place where we can witness something and not be a slave to it emotionally?
Yes, because when you detune those negative emotions, those limiting beliefs, and all of that stuff is really all bound up in fear. People say that money is the root of all evil. For a while, I used to joke and say that religion was the root of all evil. You heard me say that. But I did. There was a time in my life where I did say that. I was firmly in the belief that religion was just the root of all evil. I don't believe that anymore. But fear is the root of all evil, really. Because everything that we consider evil, everything that we judge as evil, it's all thinking that is rooted in fear. There's nothing evil about money. But when you're fearful about money, you do evil things. So therefore, it's rooted in fear. So when we detune fear, and it takes time to detune fear because we are taught fear from day one in our society. Everything is about fear of consequences. If you don't do this, this bad thing is going to happen to you. You better fear this. You better worry about that. You better plan for the future. You're going to end up XYZ. I was told so many times in my life that I was going to end up poor. I remember my father used to tell me I was going to be a ditch digger. My mother told me, you're going to end up in prison and all this fearful stuff. And I never believed it. I never believed it. I never did the things they wanted me to do to avoid that. But I never bought into their fear-based stuff because I had this knowing that dictated otherwise. And I paid attention to my knowing more than I paid attention to my parents, which turned out to be a good thing. It was a rocky road when I was a child, but as an adult, it turned out to be a very good thing.
Yeah, because then you were no longer a slave to the experiences that resonate with that, because now you're having your own experience and you step into dominion in your own experience because you're having the opportunity to step into that energy and choosing something else. And that brings a level of mastery that we can direct more into other areas too.
Yeah. Well, and what is there to be fearful of? If that's where with law of attraction, I cannot avoid delving into spirituality from law of attraction. I know there's lots of people that really get into law of attraction. And I listened to a podcast somebody sent me the other day, and it was a law of attraction type podcast. And there was no spirituality in it whatsoever. And it's a popular podcast. And I was just wondering, how do you separate those two? Because the law of attraction is the process of all creation. And I understand that spirituality can be very woo-woo to a lot of people. And when you get into the rainbows and fairies and all of that stuff, you lose a lot of people. I'm not really into any of that stuff. I joke sometimes I'm the least spiritual teacher because I'm not into all that stuff. I think that there's an energetic realm of consciousness that is beyond physical. And as human beings, we need to humanize it to make sense of it. But it's consciousness, it's intelligence, and that's what's out there. And it is pure positive energy, and we do feel the love from it. And all that's good stuff. And the human constructs of all of these things, really, angels and spirit guides and ascended masters, there's nothing wrong with any of those things. But it's such a big tent that sometimes people get really confused in the big tent. And they're not served by it. So I always say there's no judgment, there's no right or wrong in any of that. Believe in whatever you want to believe in, but don't allow the big tent of spirituality to confuse you and thus turn you off from it. Because if you really get into law of attraction, and if you really believe that you're an eternal being, that your consciousness transcends your physical being, if you believe those two things, you really don't need to believe anything else. You can really function very satisfactorily, if you will, in a joyous way as a human being, understanding the process of creation, how we attract things into our life. If you really get that, and you really believe that you're eternal, because the eternal component takes the fear away. The eternal component it allows you to not fear death. Because if you believe that your consciousness transcends your physical body, no one can take that away from you. Someone could walk in here right now and shoot me, and my physical body would be done. But my consciousness is going to move on. And maybe that's just my ego wanting that to be true. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with rolling the dice that that's just my ego, because I believe that my consciousness transcends my body. And I'm going to go with that belief system because it serves me in my now. Because if I'm spending my now allowing my ego to fear death so much that it keeps me from living, how is that belief system serving me?
I always say that how can the seeds of fear bear fruit of abundance?
Exactly.
Right.
So it's all about detuning fear and picking and dialing into the things that serve you best. And what serves me best are those two things. And I teach a lot of people a practice that's rooted really in those two things. The spiritual arm is that you're an eternal strand of consciousness, that your consciousness transcends your human being. And the law of attraction arm of it is that you're creating your own reality all the time. Everything is a manifestation. And it's funny because on this podcast that I'm speaking of, they kept talking about manifestations as this specific event when you get something that you want. That's intentional creation, yes, but everything's a manifestation.
Yeah.
We are, because if you just claim the good stuff, claim the bad stuff, I manifest that, and that's where a lot of people put the brakes on the law of attraction teachings, because you try to tell them that, hey, you're creating everything in your reality. I would have never attracted that person. I would have never attracted
that. I didn't attract losing this, and I didn't attract being
right.
My mum died,
but then you've lost all the value of understanding law of attraction when you won't claim ownership of the negative stuff. And the reason we teach vibrational flow and the spiral is so that you gain a clear understanding of how and why you manifest the bad stuff. Because we all manifest bad stuff. It's not all intentional. We're not sitting around saying, I want to gain weight and I want to lose my hair and I want to get cancer and I want to, have a negative relationship. But all of that stuff ultimately serves us in some way. But figuring that out is part of the joy of life once you get rid of the judgment and fear around it.
So when we stop trying to dictate having a perfect experience and just accept that all of it that comes as a part of the experience, we can stop disowning the bad stuff and therefore claim our power in terms of what we're creating anyway.
Exactly. Claiming your power is what when people first hear me or even the stream sometimes, but really the stream has a way of delivering it in such a way that they kind of soften and lower into it. I'm very different. I'm like, hey, this is the information right here. You create your own reality. You're responsible for everything. And people can get very turned off by that early on and say, oh, well, he's victim blaming. I'm going to move on to something else. I'm kind of okay with that because it's just because, okay, maybe you're not ready to hear all this right now. And that's okay.
And everything's not for everybody.
Right. I am not for everybody, and I'm not trying to be for everybody, but I'm here for those who are really ready to understand why and how they manifest an abusive relationship or cancer, because I have helped people transcend away from those things. I have helped people heal themselves and get out. And not, when I say I've helped people heal themselves, I am not a healer. I'm not doing any of it. I give the tools to people to allow them to empower themselves to make changes in their lives. I'm not doing anything for anybody other than sharing what I have taught myself through trial and error over 52 years.
Got it. And to be honest, one of the things, again, that I love about the way that you show up is you're not trying to be somebody's guru. You're not trying to be someone's holder of eternal truth. You're just like, my name is David Strickel. I happen to have connected with my stream. You've got yours too. But if you're not ready to connect with yours yet, here's the same truth that you're going to hear through your own stream. Have it. And if it's not for you, bye, Felicia. Have a good life, right?
Well, I've spent a lot of years unpacking all of these teachings, and somebody just waved to me outside, sorry. Unpacking all of these teachings and really figuring out what works, what doesn't, trial and error. And then I took all of the teachings and I created a practice around all of that. That's a system that works for people. It worked for me. It works for others. And it's a vehicle for me to teach this stuff to other people in a way that it really works in their lives. And that's all I want. That's my intention for the remainder of my years, is to teach this for the rest of my life to as many people that are ready to learn it.
Love it. Love it. We're starting to get a couple of questions in. So I want to talk a bit more about Taya and how this approach is supporting people, and then maybe give people the opportunity to connect with you if they'd like to connect with you. But let's start with Shawnee. Shawnee asks, what about collective consciousness, attraction of a certain reality being stronger than the individual attraction of a certain situation?
I'm a strong believer in collective consciousness because there is power in community. There is power of thought that when you compound that thought, of course, it becomes more powerful. And we see examples of that in our world always. So the TIA community, the boot camp, the things that I have where we put collective intention into things, it's, for lack of a better term, it turbocharges those manifestations. At the same time, I am a huge advocate of the fact that you are your own power and you are the creator of your reality. So while there is value in collective consciousness, don't wait for collective consciousness to bring about the change that you want. I firmly believe we all create the bubble, our own bubble of reality, and you have the power to create your bubble the way that you want it created and change anything with or without the power of the collective.
I mean, on that point, I see the same thing in my Micro to Millions program. Shauna is actually in my Micro to Millions program. She's at the mastermind level. And, you know, I always love to use the example of one of the guys who was there at the very beginning. And the reason why I like to use this one is because it perfectly encapsulates what we're saying here about the turbocharging. Because when I first started the program, beginning of 2000 and I don't know when we started the program. Anyway, time is.
Are you like me? The more you get into the spiritual stuff, the more time.
I think it's just the more I spend 2020. The more I'm losing it.
We want to bend the year 2020 into something.
Oh God! Press play, delete. Was that there was a guy that came into the program, and now there was the initial 80 or whatever people that were on it. There was a lot of people who were more woo-woo spiritual. Funnily enough, most of them didn't last. We'll leave it there. But you know, he'd been in the program for a week after it launching, and we've got a Facebook group, and people were putting all their stuff on there. And he's like, Dan, I don't think I'm in the right place. I'm not in the right place. People are talking about a field, and they saw money in a field, and what are they talking about? And this is really crazy. Everything's a bit weird here. I don't know what's going on. Like, and I just said to him, I said, bro, chill, take a breath. They're having their journey. You'll have yours. Don't worry about it. First thing, people just started randomly, week one, people started randomly calling him and paying back money that they owed him. He wasn't thinking about it. This is money that had written off. Then he finds out that he's a beneficiary in a class action lawsuit for $4 million, and he's going to get a lump of money from that. Then his business partner spins around and says, here's a credit card for $25,000 to buy ads for the business. Within 3 months, his business was doing 6 figures a month. One thing, and he's continued, I checked in with him a couple of months ago. He had his best month ever, $250,000 his business had made that month. Now, the thing I love is that he wasn't taking part in all of the stuff that we were doing, all the deeper work. He was just riding the wave and being in that collective energy, and it lifted him up. More to the point, he was getting freaked out by...
It's interesting that he had resistance, but there was some part of him that was benefiting from it because he got the results from it.
I did an intervention. To cut the cognitive resistance to it and just open him up to receiving it. But he opened up and received, and then and the thing is, we get a lot of crazy stuff in the program, you know, but I actually feel the fact that he didn't have any preconceived notions and ideas about how it had to happen through that way opened it up, because he wasn't blocked. Oh, it's got to be this. Oh, I didn't do my meditation this morning, so I'm not going to get it. Or hang on a minute, I just had a beef burger, I'm supposed to be vegan, blah, 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 blah. He didn't have any of those.
I love that, supposed to be vegan.
He didn't have any of those hang-ups. And so it was able to just sort of show up for him. But it was that, but the program is deliberately built on the back of that collective collaborative energy thing. You know, the intentions are all collaborative. We communicate, we do 3 calls a week so everyone can be in the groove of it. It's deliberately built that way. But when you're in that, and Lynn McTaggart, she scientifically set off with scientists around the world and demonstrated the power of collective collaborative energy on moving things forward. And that's what you're seeing in your program too, by the looks of it.
Yeah. Well, that's why it's a boot camp. And I tell everybody, you know, get into the group aspect of the boot camp, because that's where the true value is. And the people that really integrate into the group aspect always have a better result than the people that try to go solo. I get people from all over the world, and sometimes I'll get people that want to be more incognito in my program because they fear some sort of persecution or something like that. People from the Middle East and stuff like that, and they have to be more quiet, and it's not as magical. Those magical shifts don't occur for them as often. They get benefit from it, but it's not as magical as it is in being in the group. I have a mastery program also, and my mastery group is the synchronicity in there is insane, and the expansion in there is insane. And the thing that always amazes me is that when people sort of start rewriting their code, as I like to say, we create this code in the Taya practice for your life of what you want your life to be. And the reason we call it a code is because you're constantly rewriting it and upgrading it and wanting it to transition to something bigger and bigger and bigger. We're expansive by nature. So we're never going to just reach this nirvana as physical beings and just be enlightened and just be.
I'm enlightened.
Right. I don't buy that at all, because I had so many times where I just thought, wow, I understand the entire universe and all humanity. Who cares? There's always going to be something more that I want to expand to as a being. We're expansive by nature always. That's why we're coming to these physical experiences and doing this over and over and over again, because we want to continue to grow and expand and have challenges and overcome obstacles and create from that.
What I want to do is quickly say, members of the studio audience, we're taking questions too, so leave yours in the comments. Just go ahead. Any questions you've got, leave them in the comments. We've already tackled one around collective versus individual consciousness. We'd love to hear more from you. And whilst we're waiting for some of those questions to come in, maybe you can tell us a bit more about the experiences of some of your guys in the Taya practice and your boot camp and beyond that are having some positive experiences with doing things this way.
The thing that you really get from Taya is understanding vibrational flow. And I keep talking about that. And what vibrational flow is that we have this thing called polarity, and we're all aware of it. This is why our emotions are always sort of on this up and down cycle. Astrologers tap into this. The only issue I have with astrology is that for some, it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, because they have tapped into the reality that, yes, because with the alignments of the planets and things like this, and our birth order and the time and place and all of these things matter, because there is a set of circumstances that we project ourselves into as strands of consciousness when we choose to come here as a human being. And we know that projecting ourselves into this point of entry is going to deliver a set of circumstances that's going to set us off on this unique journey in this lifetime. And whatever our journey is going to deliver expansion for us, even if it's not the human version of an expansive journey. There's value in all of it. So when we start thinking about polarity and vibrational flow, and the fact that our emotions, which are a reflection of our vibration, are always on this up and down cycle, and you can't really time it, because polarity is part of it, our focused thought is part of it, and how we react to our manifestations is a big part of it. So we're manifesting everything. Everything is a manifestation. And when our vibration goes down, generally we have transgressor energy. Until we clean this stuff up, we all have what I call transgressor energy, waiting down in our lower vibrational field, just kind of waiting for polarity to take us down a little bit. And that transgressor energy grabs hold of us and takes us down a little further, our triggers. When we think about wanting to start a new business, and when we're in high vibration, we're thinking, gosh, I've got this great idea for this new business, and I know I'm going to be so good at this, and it's brilliant, and no one else is doing it. And I can even imagine how I'm going to get the funding to do this, and where the customers are going to come from, how joyous it's going to be to do this every day. It just feels so good. Gosh, I can't wait to do it. And then we, have dinner, we go to bed, we wake up the next morning. First thought, because it's so important, that business, but our vibration's not up here anymore. Now polarity's taking us down here in our natural flow. What the hell was I thinking? I can't do that. I don't have health insurance if I leave my job. What's that money really going to come from? And what if it doesn't work out? What if I fail? What if I lose my house? I should just be happy that I have a job right now. That's crazy. I can't do that. We've all done this.
Mm-hmm.
On some topic, we've all done this. We all do it all the time. And notice that the things that we think are big, the new business, the flow of money, the romantic relationships, and the improved health, those are our big ones, right? Those are the things that whatever our weak spot is, and we all have one, we're usually good at one or two of those, and we're usually lousy at the other two. And that's because we have this belief system. Like I met somebody, one of my boot campers, terrible, in her words, terrible at manifesting money. Mm-hmm. She would get into a situation where she was living a certain way and she would try to start a business. She was very entrepreneurial, but she always found herself back in a job because the entrepreneurial stuff never worked out for her. I know you've heard this a million times. I said, well, let's talk about where you're good at manifesting. Man, she had a long list. I'm great at making friends and I'm in this amazing relationship. My health is always good. Like, okay, so those are your areas where you manifest with ease. Mm-hmm. So why is this one so difficult? Well, we delved into her past and we identified the abundance blocks, the root that created this limiting belief around being an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And it was because her family were all employed people. None of them had a belief system around being an entrepreneur. Oh, you don't want to do that. That's too risky. Mm-hmm. I grew up in a family like that as well. So I identified with that right off the bat. And we had to clear that energy through a process of appreciation. We call that detuning. Mm-hmm. And we do that now on every level. Everybody's got their thing that they're having trouble with. So people that get into boot camp generally have an abundance block of some sort. Mm-hmm. And in these abundance blocks, we go back and find the root cause of the abundance block. We go through a process of detuning through appreciation. And we refer to it as forgiveness. There are 4 pillars of Taya, and one is forgiveness. Mm-hmm. Forgiveness in the world of Taya is not the typical forgiveness of you did something bad to me and I'm going to get over it and move on and forgive you for it. That's not appreciation. That's just getting over it, right? Mm-hmm. The problem is that whatever that thing is that you did to me is always present down there. And I've written a little, I've written a piece of code in my mind that tells me not to ever let that happen again. Mm-hmm. And so whenever I get back into a scenario where that bad thing might happen to me, my ego is going to kick in and say, nope, we're not doing that. We're going to stay right here because we don't want to feel pain and we're not going to let that bad thing ever happen again. So we're going to build this wall. That's your abundance block. Mm. We all have these in our lives. And it's amazing. In doing this boot camp now for 2.5, almost 3 years, I've had everything. We've had people with terminal illness that have healed themselves. We've had people in abusive relationships that got out of them. Mm-hmm. I've had a homeless person who came to me with a plan to pay me for boot camp. I was so impressed with her. I said, absolutely, get in. She manifested a job, her own home, a car, completely self-supporting now, and mm-hmm. paid me in record time, in a fraction of the time, for mm-hmm. the boot camp program. Mm-hmm. And just cleaned all of that up in just a matter of weeks, not months. Mm. Everything from that to now I have someone that is a billionaire in my program. And their problem is that everyone in their life wants money from them. It's an abundance block.
Yeah.
This isn't some woe is me, crybaby, I'm a billionaire, my life is a terrible person. I actually mm-hmm. really like this person. But it's a true painful abundance block when you've got mm-hmm. Billions of dollars, literally billions of dollars, and everyone in your life just wants you for your money. That creates its own set of problems. And that's why I tell people I have lived in great financial abundance and been miserable. Don't think that just manifesting money and material things is the answer to everything.
Exactly.
It's the answer to a lot in life. It buy a lot of happiness. It doesn't really buy you that lasting joy if you don't love yourself, if you don't have a good connection with Source. If you don't have some sort of a practice that grounds you on a daily basis, then you're never really going to be in that place of joy. And a lot of times we see billionaires that seem like there's never enough. Mm. You look at a Bezos or somebody like that, and the person in my program is not Jeff Bezos, not the richest person in the world. Yeah. But you see these people that no matter how much money they have, they always want more. There's just that ongoing hunger. And that's really how most people that get into that category land themselves there. And I see that as someone who still thinks that there's this moving target of joy that if they just get a little bit more money and own one more company and conquer one more industry, they're finally going to experience joy. And here they are with everything we all think we need, and they're really not living in joy.
I love that. I love that. We've actually had another question in from Anne-Marie, and I think it's probably going to be our last one today. But guys, first and foremost, I've popped the link to David's website in the description. It's thestreamofdavid.com. David shares clips of him channeling the stream on his Instagram channel, which is really cool. He's also on TikTok, killing the game. So go ahead and make sure that you support what he's doing. Connect with him.
Who knew that TikTok would be? It's spiritual. TikTok is off the chain. There's a whole spiritual arm of TikTok.
I'm coming. I've spoken to the team. We're going to get some clips ready for it. I'm going to be joining.
I think you'll do really well on TikTok. I think TikTok.
Yeah, looking forward to coming there. So yeah, just make sure you connect with David, and just join me in thanking him for taking the time out after a full day. Friday is a full day for him, but he still agreed to come out and hang with us. So really, really appreciate that. Again, I just want to gratitude to everyone. I can't even see everybody now that's been commenting and showing up live, but for all of you that are showing live and popping in the chat, I really appreciate letting me know where you're coming from. It means the world to me, you showing up live and supporting this show that I come and do every Friday evening. It's the last thing I do on a Friday before I take some time out. Really, really appreciate hanging out with you guys, sharing these ideas with you and giving you the tools to live more abundant, joyful, purpose-driven lives. I don't have to be here. You don't have to be here, but we are all here, and I really appreciate you. So be sure to follow David. You can go ahead and join my free Facebook group, dreamwithdan.com/Facebook. It's the Dream with Dan group on Facebook, where we continue the conversation. We have fun and manifest stuff. It's really groovy. But Anne-Marie, really not sure where some of my blocks are. How would you advise to figure this out, please?
There's not necessarily an easy answer to that, but generally what I do is say everything that's a block in your life is a branch. Trace the branches back to the roots and understand this is pivotal. Understand that there could be something in early childhood. Generally, all of our roots occur in the first 3 to 5 years of our lives. Everything that's going to dictate how the rest of our lives go gets cemented then, unless something traumatic disrupts our paths a little further down the road. So think about parents, think about religion, think about the things that shaped you very early on, and think about it from your then mindset. Because it's very easy as an adult to look back at early childhood and say, well, you know, my mother said this or my father said that, and now as an adult, I realized that it wasn't such a big deal. You know, much worse has happened to me since then. But that's the root. Very often that little thing that traumatized you from that young perspective is the thing that created the branch and the branch and the branch and the branch, and it just branches out into different areas, positive and negative. So of course, all of our positive branches we want to celebrate. We're not going to do any work to detune things that are working in our lives. But the negative branches are our abundance blocks, our limiting beliefs. The belief that you can't start the business, or the belief that you're never going to find true love, or the belief that you're always going to be overweight or always sick, you're always chronically ill. That branch has a root. Go back to the root and go back to that childhood version of you and detune that through a process of appreciation. Find appreciation. And a lot of times when I talk about appreciation, people think that I'm just absolutely crazy. So I'll give you my most extreme example of appreciation. If you're ready for it, buckle up. I had a woman who came into my boot camp program, and her issue was that her son was murdered by a serial killer in Seattle about 6 years ago now. And I happen to know this family. Her mother worked for me in a business that I was in up there. And I knew that this happened. It was a horrible thing. It was this anti-gay serial killer met her son, took him away from a bar and shot him in the face and another guy in the face and killed both of them. And she went through 5 years of her life being the mother of a murdered son. And when she came to me, she said, I can't live like this anymore. I'm in misery. It's horrible. I've got to do something. And we had a very long conversation where I ended up with her. I said, are you ready to transition from being this victim, you know, being the mother of a murdered son, to finding appreciation for your son's path, even the way that it ended, and ultimately even finding appreciation for his murderer?
Wow.
And she said, yes. I said, all right, you're ready for this. And she got in and she found a path to appreciation for her son, for his 23 years of life, how it ended.
Wow.
And she detuned the murderer to the point where the murderer, while she was in my program, after 5 years, was finally extradited from New Jersey back to Seattle, Washington, where this murder occurred. It took 5 years to do that. She was able to go meet the murderer of her son face to face, not celebrating it, but in a way where she was composed and together and was able to do that, leave there and go have dinner with her family and go home and do a meditation, and dreamed of dancing with her son all night.
Wow.
That's how powerful appreciation is. When you appreciate that we're all eternal beings here having a very temporary life experience, that there's nothing that's going to happen here that's going to end us, and you detune fear and you detune judgment. And she came to appreciate her son's journey. And when she did, she found that she had a better relationship with him than she did when she was down in sorrow all the time. So she's released herself from sorrow. She's released herself from judgment of her son's journey. She has better access to her son's energy now because she's up in high vibration where he is. And the idea of the murderer is not a big trigger for her the way that it used to be, because she understands that the man that murdered her son was not born that way. He turned into that through his life journey and his life experience. And she actually found a little compassion for that, even though the thing that happened was horrific. I love to use this as an example because we all have these things where we say, well, we can't forgive that. I can't forgive the person that abused me. I can't forgive the person that, somebody told me that today, somebody cheated them out of something and they can't forgive the person that cheated them out of something. I'm like, wow, if this woman can find appreciation for that, you can find appreciation for someone cheating you out of some money that you have total power to manifest again. So I'll end with that. That's a pretty powerful example.
Very powerful. And
I just want everybody to get how powerful appreciation is, how important gratitude and forgiveness are. We're taught to think like victims and stay in that victim space. And we're taught to always hold this grudge. We're taught eye for an eye. And all of that is low vibrational thinking that actually brings more negative things into our lives. I want everybody to get away from that because that will stop the cycle of negativity in your life.
Love it. David, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you coming onto the show. I'm sure everyone's grateful for it too. Again, thanks to everyone who watched us live. Again, head to thestreamofdavid.com. Check out David on TikTok, on Instagram. You don't really tweet that much. I've been tweeting.
No, I don't tweet. I don't really get into Twitter that much, but Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and TikTok, the Stream of David. And then I do have a Facebook group that teaches this practice. It's called the TYA practice, TYA. TYA stands for Trust Your Abundance. And it's whatever your version of abundance is, as you were saying earlier. And trust is the key. I think trust is the most important word in our language because once you learn to trust the universe, everything works itself out.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Guys,
I'll be back not the same time next week. Check the schedule. I think next week is when, because of the daylight savings, we're going to be half an hour earlier than you normally have us here. We'll see what's going to happen next week. I have asked for a dear friend of mine to come and talk about the power of the mind. If not, then we'll go back to a regular schedule, some teaching, a visualization, and a Q&A. But either way, it's going to be perfect because that's the way it always ends up. So keep dreaming with your eyes open, guys. And remember that you can consciously choose a more abundant, joyful, purpose-driven life. Bye for now.